Oh, yes, folks. I'll give you a little minute or two to come into the room so that we can start the ball rolling here this afternoon on our 10th edition of Take Elections Seriously. We seem to be having a couple of people in the room already. Remember that this can be viewed on either of my Facebook pages, Eddie or Edward Frederick, or live on YouTube, Eddie Frederick or Edward Frederick. If you're having any issues with commenting or anything like that on Facebook, you can switch to YouTube. Well, folks, as we ready ourselves to exercise our franchise, we must take one thing into consideration and allow that to fuel us into meaningful participation. We are all worthy, even though some may be more lettered than others. We are worth the fight of our ancestors who toiled in the vineyard of oppression and suppression by their colonial masters and eventually won the right to participate in general elections, to choose who represent them and prevail upon them as legitimate authority, a right that was bequeathed to each and every one of us today. Today, folks, I want for us to look at two issues. Voter suppression and the vicious cycle of corruption. Let us first look keenly at what is voter suppression. Voter suppression is a strategy used to influence the outcome of an election by putting things in place that would seek to discourage and or prevent specific groups of people from voting. Signing into law and making voter ID cards with an expiration date on them send the signal that if one's card is not updated, one is not likely to be qualified to vote. Sending several messages that conflict as to whether a registered voter can or cannot vote, even though he is already registered, but may be the holder of an expired ID card, is one such way to suppress the vote. Another way is to have the registration officer in the district registration office or offices tell all registrants that their voter registration card will be ready in 2 weeks, 14 days that is. And even if that person chooses to return 3 days after the 14-day period, making it 17 days after, to be told it is not ready yet and no word as to when it will be ready, is also an inefficiency, deliberate or otherwise, that can be counted as an act of voter suppression. All eligible voters who have been duly registered should be qualified to vote in any election, regardless of whether or not he or she holds an expired voter ID card, by show of the current national picture ID to include a driver's license and passport. All civic-minded groups, to include NGOs, the Trades Union Council, our moral guardians, religious bodies, the media, should be standing in the gap to help citizens protect this right, which our ancestors must be turning in their graves when aunts bring the news that corrupt individuals are trying to circumvent the proper channels put in place just to remain in office and continue their personal rampage with benefits, while the majority sink lower and lower into poverty and suffer. Is it illegal to suppress voting? Lovely question. Voter suppression in any part of the world is various legal and illegal efforts to prevent eligible voters from exercising their right to vote. Where found, such voter suppression efforts vary by state, local government, precinct, and election. We are reminded, though, that our national constitution supersedes any law crafted and enacted by our Parliament. All laws must not offend the Constitution, and wherever this is found, such laws must be declared null and void and struck off the books as unconstitutional. It is very instructive that interest groups and conscious citizens remain vigilant to guard their right to vote jealously, to ensure there is absolutely no hint of voter suppression which may favor one party over another. Some more direct examples of voter suppression may include violence and the threat of violence, legal threats, voters made to believe that they are not legally entitled to vote and will be punished for past crimes if they expose themselves through voting, excluding people otherwise eligible to vote from voting due to conviction of a criminal offense. The question as to why voter suppression is used must be addressed. As mentioned earlier, this is clearly a strategy used to influence the outcome of an election by discouraging and or preventing specific groups of people from voting. We have to keep our eyes wide open and our senses alert, since desperation can cause desperate people to do desperate things. So all now, we should monitor our situation vigilantly to ensure that we are not disenfranchised by the efforts of all those who don't care that their time is over and want to continue to overstay their welcome to preside over more suffering through the pauperization of our nation. The next issue I want to share on today relates to the vicious cycle of political corruption. I will not claim, folks, I claim no credit for this piece, but must hasten to add that it comes from a very dear friend and colleague with international reach, and who is recognized internationally and regionally, I dare say, for his innovations in the financial, business development spheres. In fact, like many of us, this is a man who can be likened to the prophet who has no honor in his own country, a serious Caribbean flaw. According to the erudition of this class act of an accomplished Caribbean man, in his short essay titled The Vicious Cycle of Political Corruption, political corruption should be considered a crime against humanity. What is political corruption, you may ask? Listen to this. Governments and people in authority not working for the best interests of those they serve, the people. Because of corruption, many and other national resources that should be used by government to improve the lives of the general population are siphoned away to line the pockets of individual politicians and to benefit their inner circle. The misappropriation of national resources often results in the majority of people of the country being robbed of basic requirements such as proper infrastructure, access to quality healthcare, affordable transportation, a world-class education, and decent employment. My words here now are those all too familiar here in Grenada? Back to the essay. After stealing the national resources, corrupt politicians often offer some scraps to the poor, which then creates a culture of dependency and handoutism. This sense of dependency tends to result in people voting for the same corrupt politicians, thus continuing the cycle. The political leaders get richer. Unemployment increases. The quality of social services decreases. The people get poorer. The sense of dependency on politicians increases. The people feel hopeless and helpless and eventually hapless. They continue to vote for the same corrupt politician or politicians, or they become apathetic and drop out of the electoral process. The effects of corruption are often generational, so to speak. Folks, it goes on and on and on, impacting people who are not yet born. The longer it lasts, the greater the number of generations impacted. My words here again. From 1995 to the present, 2 generations of citizens of school age, leaving one to graduate into little to no opportunities for growth and development, and therefore become nothing, while the other one is very much on its way. Back to the essay. Corruption is usually not stopped or even slowed by watch groups put in place by the same corrupt politicians, because many of the people selected to serve on those organizations are also dependent on the corrupt politicians. They are therefore not likely to do anything to upset the politicians who selected them and make sure they are well compensated for serving on the so-called watch groups. Elections should be an expression of the will of the people. The electoral laws and management of the election process should not be manipulated, but should be structured to allow people's will to be expressed. Through the electoral process, the people of any country should have the power to remove or replace politicians. The people of Grenada need to take back the power and show the politicians that you are not dependent on them. Let the politicians know that they are dependent on you, so they should not take you for granted. Make sure your vote counts by voting for people who really care about you. Someone who shows up only when they need your vote do not care about you. All they care about is your vote. The giving of a toilet or some food in order to secure your vote is not an indication that they care. It is simply a transaction. My word again, or my words here now. What about wood? The 2 politicians who like to give wood in exchange for favors. Hello? That's transactional, using wood. When you participate in such a transaction, you have allowed someone else to set a transactional value on your vote. I should have told you, I return to the essay. When you participate in such a transaction, you have allowed someone else to set a transactional value on your vote. God, the creator of the universe, so valued the individual's will that he gave us the freedom to choose him or not to choose him. We should not therefore allow politicians to cheapen the value of our political will. The expression of our political will is one of our greatest assets. Do not allow anyone to set a value on it. Your vote is worth much more than a toilet, a plate of food, or a window, or a shot of rivers, or all of them put together. My word again, or even wood. What we need, back to the essay, what we need are good paying jobs, better healthcare, which is a right and not a privilege, lower cost transportation, improved education, and better opportunities for our children. Which one of those things have gotten better for you over the last 10 years? My words now, and I dare add, since 1995. Back to the essay. Your vote is the most powerful expression of how you would like to be governed. If it is only worth a plate of food, then it should be no surprise that once the politicians get in power, they feel no need to do anything else for you. And they are correct. It is time for Grenadians to free themselves from the imprisonment caused by corruption, ignorance, joblessness, dependency, and hopelessness. Please vote. End of essay. Are you up to this point one of those who continue to say, "It's a good thing I don't vote"? After all, bad politicians are elected by good people who don't vote. I repeat for emphasis. Bad politicians are elected by good people who don't vote. So when the time comes, take elections seriously. Your vote is a vote to put Grenada on track with integrity, law, and order. Please share this, folks. A little later on this evening, you'd be having my 112th edition of Edification. So don't forget to tune in. Edification comes up this evening. All the best, and keep this rolling. Keep it sharing, folks, because many people need to learn the value of their vote. Stop concentrating on the price of everything and focus instead on the value of everything. Price is not as important as value. So take care until this evening when I would be delivering Edification.